What if I told you the secret to powerful writing is hiding 90% of your story? Ernest Hemingway did it, and his stories are unforgettable because of it. Today, we're diving into the iceberg theory, Hemingway's most brilliant writing trick, and I'll show you exactly how you can use it in your own work. Picture this. You're reading a story, and something devastating happens to a character, but the author never actually tells you what it is. Instead, you figure it out from tiny clues: an empty crib, an unused wedding dress, a dog that won't stop howling. And somehow, that hidden tragedy hits you harder than any direct explanation ever could. That's the power of Ernest Hemingway's iceberg theory. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to use this brilliant writing trick in your own stories. So what exactly is the iceberg theory? Think about a real iceberg floating in the ocean. What do you see? Just the tip, right? But underneath the water, there's this massive chunk of ice, about 90% of the iceberg, that you can't see, but you know it's there. Hemingway's writing works the same way. The story you actually read, the dialogue, the action, the surface details, that's just the tip. The real story, the deep emotional truth, the heavy stuff that matters most, that's hidden underneath, and the reader has to discover it for themselves. Hemingway called this the dignity of movement of an iceberg. He believed that if you know your story well enough, you can leave out the obvious parts and trust your readers to fill in the blanks. The result? Stories that feel incredibly real and hit you right in the feelings. But here's the key. You can't just randomly leave stuff out. You have to know exactly what you're hiding and why. The diagram on screen shows examples of things that you might include directly into the story, as well as things you should leave out as part of the underwater part. The underwater part of the iceberg has to be there, even if readers can't see it. Let me show you one of the most famous examples often linked to this technique. You may have heard this 6-word story. For sale, baby shoes, never worn. 6 words, that's it. But think about what just happened in your mind when you heard that. We don't see a single mention of miscarriage, stillbirth, or loss. There's no description of grieving parents, no nursery being cleaned out, no shattered dreams. Yet you felt all of that, didn't you? Those 6 words created an entire emotional landscape in your mind. You filled in the tragedy because the evidence was right there in front of you. Baby shoes that were never worn tell a story almost too heavy to say aloud. This is the iceberg theory in action. The power doesn't come from what's said, but from what's left unsaid, what you can't help but understand. Before we dive deeper, here's your first challenge. Can you write your own 6-word story? Try to create something that hints at a bigger emotional truth without directly stating it. Pause the video if you want to give it a shot. Now, if you've been learning about creative writing, you've probably heard the rule, show, don't tell, about 1,000,000 times. And you might be thinking, wait, isn't the iceberg theory just show, don't tell, taken to the extreme? You're absolutely right. In some ways, this is an extreme iteration of the show, don't tell rule writers are encouraged to follow, a rule we should all be familiar with. But here's the key difference. Regular show, don't tell might have you write, Sarah slammed the door and threw her keys across the room, instead of Sarah was angry. You're still showing the reader everything that's happening. You're just doing it through actions instead of direct statements. The iceberg theory goes several steps further. It would have you write, Sarah hung her keys on the hook, then stood staring at them. The anger isn't shown directly. It's completely hidden beneath the surface, and the reader has to figure out what Sarah is really feeling from the subtext. Think of it this way. Show, don't tell teaches you to paint a clear picture. The iceberg theory teaches you to paint only part of the picture and let the reader's imagination fill in the rest. Both techniques make your writing more engaging, but the iceberg theory creates an even deeper level of reader involvement. It's like the difference between showing someone a photograph and showing them a shadow on the wall. Both can tell a story, but the shadow makes the viewer work harder to understand what they're seeing, and that extra effort makes the discovery more powerful. Now let's look at how Hemingway used this technique in his longer works. I'm going to show you 3 examples that demonstrate different ways to hide the iceberg. Example number 1, hills like white elephants. Hemingway's Hills Like White Elephants takes place at a small train station in the Ebro Valley of Spain, where an American man and a woman named Jig are waiting for a train to Madrid. On the surface, the story seems like casual dialogue. They drink beer, talk about the hills, and make small observations about the heat. Jig remarks, "They look like white elephants," while the man deflects the comment and steers the conversation back to a perfectly simple operation. Above the iceberg, we see a simple scene: two people sitting at a cafe table, drinking beer, talking about the hills, and waiting for a train. Their words are brief and understated, often skirting around the subject of the operation. The setting is painted with sparse details: the hot sun, the station between two landscapes, the drinks they order. Below the iceberg, the true emotional and moral conflict unfolds. Jig is facing a life-changing decision, torn between her desire for something more permanent and the man's insistence on continuing their carefree lifestyle. The white elephants symbolize the pregnancy and the burden or beauty it might represent, while the contrasting landscapes, barren versus fertile, highlight the stakes of her choice. The depth of their relationship, the power imbalance, and Jig's unspoken doubts all live beneath the surface, never stated but deeply felt. Example 2. Big Two-Hearted River. Hemingway's Big Two-Hearted River follows Nick Adams as he returns from World War I and goes on a fishing trip in the Michigan wilderness. On the surface, the story seems simple. Nick hikes through burned-over country, sets up camp, cooks a meal, and fishes in a clear river. He focuses on ordinary tasks like pitching his tent and boiling coffee, describing them in great detail. Nick was happy as he crawled inside the tent. He had not been unhappy all day. Above the iceberg, the story is a series of simple, concrete actions. Nick walks through the countryside, notes the burned ground, pitches his tent, eats beans, brews coffee, and fishes. Hemingway's descriptive focus is on physical details: the weight of his pack, the smell of the river, the motion of casting a line. Below the iceberg, the story speaks of war trauma, emotional numbness, and the struggle to reclaim a sense of order and control. The burned land suggests destruction and loss, while the flowing river symbolizes renewal and life. Nick's deliberate, almost ritualistic actions show a man trying to ground himself, avoid overwhelming memories, and find solace in the simplicity of nature. Example number 3. A Clean, Well-Lighted Place. Hemingway's A Clean, Well-Lighted Place is a short story set in a Spanish cafe late at night, where two waiters discuss an old man who recently attempted suicide. On the surface, the action is minimal. The old man drinks brandy alone, the waiters serve him, and they close the cafe after he leaves. The dialogue is simple and restrained. "Last week he tried to commit suicide," one waiter says, but offers no detailed explanation. Above the iceberg, we see a simple, almost uneventful scene. Two waiters talking about an old man who drinks too much, the slow passing of time in an empty cafe, and the mundane process of closing for the night. The setting is described plainly: a clean, well-lit space in contrast to the dark, empty streets outside. Below the iceberg lies the story's emotional and philosophical weight. The old man's drinking is a shield against loneliness and despair, while the older waiter's empathy suggests his own confrontation with life's emptiness. The cafe's cleanliness and light symbolize small but vital refuges from darkness and meaninglessness. The tension between the younger and older waiter reflects the gap between youthful impatience and the hard-earned understanding of life's solitude. So, how do you apply the iceberg theory in your own writing? Here are 10 tips to help you. Tip 1. Know your full story. Before you start hiding things, you need to know exactly what you're hiding. Write out the complete backstory, even if you'll never use it. What happened before your story starts? What are your characters really thinking? What's the deepest truth at the heart of your tale? Imagine you're writing a scene about two siblings arguing over a family heirloom. You need to know their full history, that the older sister sacrificed her dreams to care for their sick mother while the younger chased freedom. Even if you never state this, that knowledge will color the tension in every line of dialogue. Tip 2. Choose what to show. Pick the details that will let readers discover the hidden story themselves. Think about evidence rather than explanation. Instead of writing, "Sarah was devastated by her breakup," Show her wearing an oversized hoodie while aggressively cleaning her apartment at 2 a.m. Tip 3. Trust your readers. Don't underestimate your audience. Readers are smart. They can pick up on clues and make connections. You don't need to spell everything out. In fact, readers often enjoy the detective work of figuring things out. Instead of explaining, John missed his father deeply, show John quietly fixing the broken watch his father left him and wearing it even though it doesn't tick. You never say grief, but readers feel it. Tip 4. Use dialogue and action. Let characters reveal themselves through what they say and do, not through explanation. Real people rarely announce their feelings directly. They show them through their choices, their reactions, and their silences. Instead of, Lisa was nervous about the surgery, you could write, "It's just routine, right?" Lisa said. She turned the hospital bracelet until it bit into her wrist. The rewrite shows Lisa's nervousness through her words and actions, rather than simply telling the reader she's nervous. Tip 5. Edit your text. Hemingway's writing might look clean and effortless, but it didn't start that way. His brilliance came from relentless editing, cutting everything that didn't serve the story, while keeping the unspoken depth intact. The visible words on the page were only the tip of the iceberg because he had already explored all the layers underneath, then stripped away everything unnecessary. For example, instead of writing, Anna felt exhausted and defeated after a long day at work. She slumped into the chair, her shoulders aching, her mind replaying the argument with her boss. She hated how he made her feel so small, like she was worthless, like her ideas meant nothing. After ruthless editing, you might write, Anna dropped into the chair, rubbing the coffee stain on her sleeve. This one sharp image now says everything that the overwritten version tried to explain. Tip 6. Cut adjectives and adverbs. Hemingway believed that if your nouns and verbs are strong, you rarely need extra descriptive words. Adjectives and adverbs can clutter a sentence or weaken its impact by telling the reader what to feel instead of letting them sense it. For example, you might write, "The tall, dark forest loomed ominously under the glowing full moon." But after cutting the adjectives and adverbs, you would end up with, "The forest loomed under the full moon." By cutting unnecessary adjectives, tall and dark, and the adverb, ominously, the sentence feels tighter and more open-ended. Readers can now project their own feelings of fear onto the scene rather than being told what to feel. Hemingway trusted the power of suggestion. Tip 7. Start late, end early. Hemingway rarely wasted time on long setups or tidy conclusions. He would throw readers into the middle of the action, where emotions are already simmering, and end the scene just before a resolution. This approach leaves room for the reader's imagination, creating tension and mystery. It's the storytelling equivalent of joining a conversation mid-argument and leaving before you hear who won, which makes you want to know more. Instead of writing a full scene like this, John came home after work, nervous about what he had to say. He found Anna sitting at the table. After some small talk, he finally told her he was leaving. You could start late like this. "You're leaving?" she asked, folding the letter. The envelope was already torn. And end early, so instead of explaining John's answer or giving closure, cut the scene after her question of "You're leaving." Tip 8. Use objects as emotional anchors. Objects can carry emotional weight without a single word of explanation. Hemingway often used everyday things, a fishing rod, a cafe table, a pair of shoes, as silent witnesses to his characters' inner lives. When readers see how a character interacts with an object, they intuit the feelings behind the action without being told. This creates subtext and makes the scene feel real and alive. For example, instead of "Mark missed his late wife deeply," write, "Mark dusted the rocking chair every morning." The rocking chair does the emotional work. It hints at absence, habit, and love without ever naming grief. Tip 9. Keep dialogue stripped and realistic. Hemingway's dialogue is lean, but it speaks volumes. His characters rarely deliver long speeches or spell out what they feel. Instead, emotions are revealed through short exchanges, repetition, interruptions, and what's left unsaid. Real conversations are often fragmented and indirect, and Hemingway used this to create tension and subtext. A single repeated line or a pause can show more emotion than an entire paragraph of explanation. For example, take a look at this dialogue. "It's not a big deal," she said. "No?" he asked. "No," she repeated, staring at the table. "Not at all." The repetition and her refusal to meet his gaze tell us this is a big deal, even though the words deny it. Tip 10. Write what's true. Hemingway believed that honest writing resonates far more than flowery, exaggerated prose. His advice, all you have to do is write one true sentence, means finding a line that feels real, grounded, and authentic to the character, setting, or emotion. Instead of forcing grand metaphors or overly poetic language, focus on details that genuinely capture the moment. Truth in writing doesn't mean strict fact. It means emotional truth, something that feels unshakably real. For example, instead of "the city's heart beat like 1,000 drums," write "cars drove up and down the high street." The second sentence paints a vivid image without unnecessary metaphor, making it feel tangible and true. But why is this technique so powerful? Why do stories hit harder when we have to figure them out ourselves? First, it makes readers active participants. Instead of just absorbing information, they're solving puzzles, making connections, and experiencing those aha moments. When you figure something out yourself, it feels more real and meaningful. Second, it mirrors real life. In the real world, people don't walk around explaining their motivations. We have to read between the lines, pick up on subtle cues, and make educated guesses about what others are thinking and feeling. Third, it respects the reader's intelligence. Instead of being told what to think, readers get to draw their own conclusions. This creates a more personal connection to the story. Finally, it makes the emotional impact stronger. When you have to work to understand something painful or beautiful, it affects you more deeply than if someone just tells you about it. Now that you know all about the iceberg theory, here's a challenge for you. I want you to write a short scene, maybe just a paragraph or two, where a character is dealing with something difficult, but you never directly state what the problem is. Here are some ideas to get you started. Someone packing a suitcase in a specific way. A conversation where the most important thing is never mentioned. A character avoiding a particular room in their house. Someone going through a daily routine that reveals their emotional state. Remember, you need to know exactly what your character is going through, but your readers should have to piece it together from the clues you give them. Share your attempts in the comments. I'd love to see what you come up with. The iceberg theory isn't just a writing technique. It's a philosophy about respecting your readers and trusting in the power of subtlety. Hemingway understood that the most powerful stories are often the ones that trust us to feel the weight of what's not said. Remember, great writing isn't about showing off how much you know or how cleverly you can explain things. It's about creating an experience that feels real and meaningful to your readers. Sometimes the best way to do that is to step back, trust your audience, and let them discover the truth for themselves. The next time you're writing, ask yourself, what can I leave out? What can I trust my readers to understand? You might be surprised by how much more powerful your stories become when you let the iceberg do its work. That's all from us today. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more lessons and ideas. See you next time.